People of Reddit, what is your craziest most interesting I need a favor, no questions asked story? Can I stand here and speak to you like we know each other? A girl was leaving a wedding reception alone. From the cruise boat I worked on. I was on shore as passengers were leaving, and she came up and asked me this. I told her absolutely and jumped right into the role. She gave me a big hug and said how good it was to see me. Around then I kept a smile on my face, but asked if something was wrong. As it turned out, there was another guest at the reception making her uncomfortable. She said he hadn't done anything specific, it was just a bad feeling. But she didn't want to go pointing him out or accusing him of anything. She just wanted to see him to go his car and leave before she went out to the lot. Once that happened, we chatted another few minutes before she was on her way. You're a good person for doing that. Friend asked me to loan him 500 euros. Would give it back in 2 days but needed it right now. Gave him 500 euros. He gave me 2000 euros the day after. I was a happy man. My best friend of 4 years called me in the middle of the night asking me to drive him from North Carolina to Minnesota. He said that we had to leave tonight and I could never ask him about it in the future. I did it. 2 weeks later I was being questioned by my local police department about a murder he was involved in. Haven't seen or heard from him since. This is a true no question asked story. Most of the stories here have a detailed explanation. Have an upvote. I had a friend who came into my house while I was cleaning. He was looking to be in a hurry and told me, Resna, I need to borrow your car to run an errand. My dad won't let me take his car. Said friend had his license suspended recently and a history with some unsavory people. So I ended up saying, yeah totally, but I'm going with you and driving. He responds by telling me it wouldn't work that way. It worked that way. And yes, it was drugs. I live in a sketchy town with a lot of crime and homeless people. It's practically impossible to exit your apartment without seeing someone homeless. However, they're generally really nice and therefore I'm nice to them too. A few greet me when I walk by because I give them my leftovers sometimes. Well, one particular hobo and I are good friends. By friends I mean we talked that one time when I was going home from a frat party and he told me I was 8. Anyway, he saunters up to me one night when I was walking home and asked me to do him a favor. He wanted me to take another route home but didn't explain why. Now I typically don't follow instructions from the homeless in the middle of the night but something in my gut told me to listen to him. Probably because for the first time since I've seen him, he looked sober. So I did. The next day I heard by word of mouth that a woman was raped. I don't remember if it was also a murder or not, on the route that I was going to take. That woman could have been me. I never saw Hobo Bro again after that. Sounds like he wanted the street to himself. The night you almost stopped a rape. Capital O. Not me, but a family member. He was USAF with a number of people under his command and stationed in Nevada if I recall correctly. In the middle of the night, one of his guys shows up on his porch, banging on his door as if his life depended on it. Sir, I've done messed up. I need your help to fix it. Can you come with me? With nothing more than saying, son, whatever it is you need, we'll get you through it. He dons his dungarees and gets in the guy's car and they drive off into the dead of night. He notices they are headed out of town, into the desert, in the pitch black of night. He tries to get the driver to talk, and the guy just sort of breaks down. I had an argument with my woman, so I drove her out into the desert and left her there. I done messed up. They'll boot me out for sure after this. The boss is doing his best to keep the guy calm, reassure him he's going to come out of this okay. Outwardly, he's serene, but he's getting more anxious by the minute. They drove further and further into the desert, finally pulling off the road. They get out, and the guy goes into his trunk, hands over a flashlight and points his boss toward where he left the girl. Boss starts calling out, hoping the girl was nearby, and turns to ask the airman for his girl's name. While turning, the beam of his flashlight hits the guy, and all the tumblers scarily clicked into place. The airman was carrying a shovel. In the heat of an argument, the airman strangled his gal to death and drove her out into the desert in a state of panic over what he'd done. So he went to the one guy he knew could help him to set things to rights, his boss. His boss that somehow now found himself helping to dig a shallow grave and trying to seem supportive. After all, here he was in the desert with a killer. Nobody knew where he was and certain death awaited at the hands of this guy or those of Mother Nature if he couldn't keep a cool head. The officer was smart about it. He convinced the airman to bury her shallow so the scavengers could come and clean up, and so the job only took a few minutes. They go back to the car and he casually manages to leave the shovel stabbed upright into the roadside to mark the location. On the drive back into the city, the airman is almost euphoric, relieved. The boss keeps reassuring him all the way back into town, just waiting to get out of the danger zone that is the desert. As they pull into the city, the boss has his airman pull into an all-night drive-in diner and then pays for burgers, fries and shakes. When the meal's almost done, he tells the kid, "You know what you've got to do, son. You know I can't do it for you." The guy kind of nods, walks over to a payphone and dials up the cops to confess. I was going into work on a late Sunday afternoon, saying goodbye to my GF at the time who would be leaving to go back home for the week. The best friend calls me as I'm about ready to walk out the door. Answering from 1,500 miles away. He says he lost his job, doesn't have a place to stay, and has just enough money to drive to me. Could he live with me on the couch for a few months and get back on his feet? He arrived 2.5 days later. Ended up borrowing around $1,000 to help get readjusted. It stopped him from doing something crazy like enlisting and helped get him a first job. He got 2 others while he was living with me. He stayed 9 months and left town with several thousand in the bank and re-enrollment in a master's program. Also broke me out of funk and got me with a new desire to get myself to a better place. 10/10. Would absolutely do it again for him. You are a solid friend. I was 17 and my father and mother traveled to the countryside for their 21st wedding anniversary. A few hours after they left, I got a call from my father saying he needed me to do something for him. The serious tone he used made me say sure absolutely without knowing what he was about to ask. He told me to go out the front where there would be a wrapped present on the foot of the driveway. He told me not to open it, look around to see if anybody was watching, then put it in my car and drive it to a commercial waste dumpster up the road and throw it out. I then had thoughts like, is my father a drug dealer and has he gotten himself in trouble with some gang? I asked him what the heck was going on, and he just reiterated that he needed me to do this for him without any questions or opening of the gift. I did exactly as he asked. I picked up the gift, made sure nobody was watching and threw it out in the appropriate dumpster. I never found out exactly what was in that box, and never opened it. However, shortly after, my mother became suspicious of him having an affair. After my father denying it but his story unraveling over time, he was found by my mother in bed with another woman. My mum shortly after tried to kill herself. They then both involved myself and my brother as painful attempts of pitting us against one parent or another. I later found out the box almost certainly just contained pictures of my dad freaking this mistress, whom he is now married to. I don't speak to my parents much anymore and moved interstate. My friend and his wife were raging sickheads for almost 20 years. They have both been clean for 3 years and at this point his prostate cancer has returned after being in remission for several years. He had heart surgery about 3 months ago. A few weeks ago he asked me if I could do him a huge favor. I told him of course, because he was there for me when I was completely down and out and unconditionally gave what little he had when no one else could be bothered. He said, "You don't even know what I'm going to ask you yet." I told him that whatever he needed, I'd make it happen. Turns out he and his wife just wanted a ride to Hackensack, New Jersey so he could buy her a wedding ring. They've been married over 20 years and due to their drug habit have repeatedly pawned and ultimately sold off their wedding rings. Now they are clean and I feel they believe he doesn't have much time left. He wants her to have her wedding ring. I drove them last week. He couldn't get his legs in the car without help. After they went in and picked out and purchased the rings, he couldn't get out of the car to get lunch and pick up the rings when they were ready an hour later. It was a huge effort for him to take that ride and walk without his wheelchair. He spent all his savings on that set of rings. I took a few hours off from work and we had a picnic in a park in Hackensack. It wasn't a favor or an inconvenience. I felt lucky that they asked. You're a good friend. Pretty minor considering some of the other stories here, but I have one. During the Dark Knight Rises premiere, me and my friends were close to the front of the line. Our theater was the only showing for the next 2 hours, as the other room had broken down. The people in that line were told that if there was any room left in ours they'd be allowed in. Slim chance to none. So we start going in and this guy at the front of the other line looks desperate. We lock eyes and he gives me a questioning nod. I nod back knowing what he wants. He walks straight up to me with a big smile on his face and says, "Hey man, how have you been?" I respond immediately with, "Max, good to see you. Glad you could make it." "I'm good. You?" I have no idea if that's his name but he looks like a Max and he rolls with it. And from there we launch into small talk and shoulder claps as he walks in with me and my friends under the suspicious eyes of the usher. As soon as we're in he veers off and tells me he owes me one. My friends patiently wait until he's out of earshot and ask me who the frick that was. I shrugged and said no idea. When the movie ends and we walk out, we see each other and this time he's with a girl. He hurries over to me and says that he got a date with a girl and that this is the best night ever. If I ever need anything he's my man. Never saw him again. Max was a cool guy. I hope his date went well. You are the very definition of a great bro wingman. About a year ago my roommate asked me to squeeze her boob as hard I can. I asked her why. She told me to just do it. So I oblige her and she stands there with eyes closed for 5 seconds then runs out the apartment door giggling. She denies it ever happened now. The frick. Kind of silly, but I was at work one day, commuting from home in a NY suburb to NYC, and my dad called me. He says, "I need a favor. Pick up a copy of the most recent Playboy on your way home." "Okay, I'll pay you for it." I asked him why and he told me that sometimes when he asks me for things I should just freaking do them, not angry. We're jokers. Turns out there was an article about someone in the wine business that he wanted to read. It was just a bonus that he could confuse the crap out of me in the process. Wine article. While we were hanging out, my best friend got a call from his girlfriend. Now, she hardly let him out of her sight on any given day, so having some free time to sit around, chat, and play up some games had become a vanishingly rare commodity. But now, on this particular day, she really needed him. She didn't have a car, and needed him to drive to her and take her somewhere right away. He went, of course. She told him she needed to go to an interview with a college she has applied for, and had forgotten about it, and she needed a ride. My friend took his girlfriend an hour away to the college, called me to chat, and picked her up again a few hours later. It turned out later that she had him drive her to the campus, cheated on him with another guy at a place a few blocks away, and then had her boyfriend drive her home after she slept with this other guy. And that was the story of how my best friend finally realized he was in a failing relationship. No, wait. He stayed with her for more months and rented a place next door to be closer to her before she broke up with him the next day after he moved in. Because my friend was in love. She wasn't. Wow, she is a crappy person. And that's just sad for your friend being used like that. Love sucks. When I was 14, I was spending an unproductive summer vacation day watching TV. I was alone, and was somewhat annoyed to hear a desperately loud knock at my door. As I unlocked the door, my best friend at the time rushes in and nearly pushes me over in the process. He was helping his grandma and attempted to scatterboard home when diarrhea struck. This guy comes into my house and absolutely destroys my bathroom. It was one of the worst experiences of my life, not to mention his life. But the guy literally didn't ask, and he didn't need to do so. Human beings should let other human beings poop with impunity. UHH unless it's dysentery or something. I thought it said helping his grandma skateboard. Don't know how familiar you guys are with how underage college parties work, but when the police bust in, usually for a noise complaint, nothing happens. But my buddy was at a party at one of our more sketchy friends' houses and the police bust in, find coke, and the 3 or 4 cops start trying to process and arrest the whole party. He is luckily in the back. They haven't seen him yet, so he texts me saying to come to that house in a specific spot, turn my lights off and text him. So I do, and I watch him leap out a 2nd floor window and run into my car, and upon seeing the 2 cops' cars as I drive off, I ask my first question, the being what the frick. He gave me a bottle of Grey Goose for my trouble. Homie, move on your part. Gangster moves on his part. One year, my dad messaged me on Facebook and said, if your sister asks, that guy who was there at Christmas asked for your number. I'm pretty sure that guy was my brother-in-law's older brother. He never told me why she would even ask that, or what the frick happened that he needed me to back him up. Dad, what? Gay lover. My buddy used to call me all the time in the middle of the night. I'd go across the county and pick him up. Never asked why. The fresh bruises on his face the next morning were always an answer he would not have been able to put into words. One night though I get to call, race over to his house like usual, but when I park at the end of the cul-de-sac where he lived, 2 police cars came flying at me, boxed me in and came out guns pointed. As soon as I raised my hands they ripped me from the car and stuffed my face in the pavement. I was arrested because he shot the windows out of a semi on the road behind his house with a BB gun he stole that day from Walmart. I found this out for the first time when we were thrown in the same cell about an hour after being arrested. Dan was a dumb dong but he was a great friend. TLDR. I should have asked that one time. My brother once asked me for my Glock and some duct tape. I thought he was messing with me so I said sure. No questions asked. Turns out he wanted to see if could make a silencer out of duct tape. Pretty sure he's not playing with a full deck, but I still love the idiot. The answer is no. By the way, Glock and some duct tape, for when you really need to stop something from moving. We found a very real looking fake hand. We put said fake hand in a Ziploc bag and drove it to Big Eric's. Now Big E, as we called him, was a huge Italian guy, roughly 225 pounds and 32 inches biceps. We ring the doorbell and when he answers we look freaked out and say crap. Something happened and we need to get rid of this. Eric calmly takes the bag and closes the door without ever saying a word. Eric seems like a good friend to have in a sticky situation. I need you to do me a favor. Okay, I have this goat. Okay, and it's always hungry. Okay, and it poops inside sometimes. Okay, I'm going to Vegas for a week. Okay, that's where I won my goat. Okay, his name is Devon. He needs to be fed barley and wheatgrass. Okay, can you take care of Devon while I'm in Vegas? I'm not taking care of your goat. Not even for $200. It's my gambling money. WH. Okay. Got a call from a friend at 4 in the morning one night declaring that he needed some help. We both lived in the same dorm at the time and I figured he was just trying to get in without being seen by the resident assistant drunk, because we were both underage at the time. My groggy butt didn't ask any questions and went down to the side door to let him in. He wasn't there though. I looked around, called his name a couple times, smoked a cig and went back inside cause it was cold as Santa's balls outside. I tried calling him again to no avail and end up going to his room to see if his roommate knew where he was. Turns out he was in there naked, handcuffed to the bed with a gag around his neck that he spat out. I laughed so hard I woke the neighbors up. Then they laughed with me. We let him out and he proceeded to tell us this story of this fine woman grinding on him and handcuffing him to a bed. Apparently she was on top and right before he got lucky, she hopped off, laughed at him and told him to figure it out when he asked how he was getting out. That's when he laid there for what he said was 3 hours trying to get his phone from his desk, at the foot of the bed, to his face so he could call. Felt bad for him, but never letting him live that one down. Imagine if a man did that to a woman. He would be a registered sex offender and probably in prison for a very long time. A buddy of mine called me 7 or more times in a row while I was at work. Didn't leave a voicemail, just kept calling. I finally answer and he's sobbing. This is a tough guy and I can't imagine what's going on. I can hardly understand him, but I make out I need you here at 2 AM. It's a 5-hour drive just to get to him, but this is my dude. So I agree. He texts me an address. I pop it into Google. It's some old country road about 20 minutes from where he actually lives. I show up at 2 AM and he's standing on the side of a road with a woman and a dog. He hugs and thanks the woman, picks up the dog and gets in the car. He doesn't say much except for thank you while hugging this dog. The whole trip he is just hugging this dog. We head back to my place and I crash. I skip work. When I do wake up there's a note on my door. I'll never be able to do for you what you've done for me, but if you need something, anything, just ask. He was gone. I didn't hear from him for about a year. He's now living comfortably in Seattle with that dog. This is something I would like to know more about. Play the role of an exotic boyfriend to impress her old high school friends and make her ex-boyfriend jealous. I'm a foreigner with a slightly prevalent accent. It was really weird acting that out. I had to force myself to be attracted to her and do things I don't normally do with real girlfriends, like grabbing her butt and kissing her in full view of everyone. Fake plans about moving in together after the semester is done. Use pet names and different languages. The works. I mean, she's pretty but I wasn't in the least attracted to her and I hate when people kiss my kid in public. Anyway, I guess I acted well. Her friends were actually envious. The ex-boyfriend tried getting her back, saying crap like what we had was real. He's just using you. Oh irony. He's the one who dumped her. I faded out of her life after a couple months. Mainly because she went on this rant after Obama was first elected. It was just rampant with ignorance. Also some crap about how I'm not really black because I don't sound black. Mate asked me to come with him to a parking lot for a few minutes. I said sure. He told me to stand over in the corner of the parking lot and gave me a knife. I watched him meet with some people and they talked for a few minutes, then they left and he told me we were done here. Weird. Drugs. Sophomore geometry. There was this sketchy kid who sat in front of me. I think he was a junior or senior. Behind me sat the chief of police's daughter. This was in the 90s. There was still a believable thing. A police program to scare kids off using drugs. We'd all share answers and stuff, so we knew each other's temperament. Well, dude in front whips around when it's time for practice and says, "Can you hide my speed?" 1. If he needed it hid. He said it kinda loud. I mean, 3 rows took notice and 2. Frick man. Speed. That ain't holding weed. Confiscated by teacher. Weed goes missing. This is 15 years old me can't believe what the frick. I don't want to say no. He's looking at me like Rasputin. He seems half sincere, half I took some to hide it. I can feel the police chief's daughter eyeballing me. She was kinda cool, but I still pictured, "Hey dad, some kids were fricking with speed in school." Somehow I came up with, "Open your book. The spine bends open. Slip the speed between the spine and the cover. Close the book. Put it under the table over there." Diffused. Didn't see the kid much after that. Probably because he was fricking with speed. There was still a believable thing. A police program to scare kids off using drugs. I remember it. I never actually encountered drugs in my life during that time. So basically, the police officer and school kept telling me that everybody was using these drugs and they wanted me to use them. Oh boy, someone I barely knew asked me to stand almost naked in a room with a hoodie for 1 hour. She paid me $500 to do it, being broke and very attracted to her. I said yes. We never spoke of it again, but apparently, I took part in the taming of her boyfriend and I was his punishment if he had proved unworthy. I was supposed to beat him with a wooden paddle if he did something wrong. He did just fine. That's really one of the most random things I have read today. I was brushing my teeth at 6 in the morning before I had to go out and run a volunteer event with 10 other people. We were picking up furniture on my college campus right before graduation. I get a call from my buddy who is also volunteering and he says, "I need you to come over now." I finish quickly and put my shoes on and run over to his place. It's a small campus so it takes me 5-10 minutes or so. I go to his dorm and he lets me in. There's some girl in my room and she won't leave. I assume he brought someone home last night, but whatever, I got it. Go into his place. It's a suite, so a long hallway with 4-5 rooms, and I make it into his room. This girl is on the floor without shoes but otherwise fully clothed. She's leaning against his dresser. I start to calmly ask her where her shoes are, where she's from, etc. Starts mumbling something and at this point I'm convinced she's on something. Continue to try to find her shoes until she throws my friend's cleats at me. At this point I pick her up by her wrists and walk her out of the room. Apparently she stumbled into his room and woke him up by breaking things in his place. I leave to go finish getting ready for my event when she's still outside and tries to swing at me. I'm not a big guy but I was a wrestler, so I keep trying to keep her away and not trying to hurt someone. She stops trying to follow me after missing a punch and I leave thinking it's over. I walk by his dorm 45 minutes later and there's 5 cop cars and an ambulance. Confused I pass by and look on and there's mystery girl bleeding and handcuffed. Turns out she tried to fight campus security when they asked her name and offered to drive her home. Happens, I guess. My brother messages me at 2 AM saying, "I need your help. Meet me outside the house in 30 minutes. I oblige because he's my brother. I don't ask any follow-up questions about it. I just meet him where he asked. He pulls up to my house drunk telling me I need to drive to this shopping center, so I do. Turns out, he was out drinking with his friend, who took a separate car, and got pulled over by the cops. The cop said if he could find someone sober to drive him home, he wouldn't have his car towed or give him a DUI. He was drunk but was really good at playing like he wasn't. I'm not sure how he managed to get the cop to go lenient on him. He may have passed the sobriety tests, but the cop knew something was up. So I drive him home and drive my brother and I home and got respect for helping them out when they needed it most. TLDR. I'm a bro brother. Freshman year of college, I was rooming with 3 strangers. 1. M. Partied quite a bit and came home drunk often and occasionally brought back girls. The university is a dry campus and the police loved to crack down on drunk college students. M comes to the dorm one night shouting lock the door, so we let him in. One roommate locks the door and starts looking through the peephole, fully expecting police officers to run by. We ask him what's going on. He doesn't respond for a minute or so, and we are getting more nervous. He heaves out, I just ran here from X bar. That bar was over 2 miles away, and M was very drunk, so an impressive featuring to stay upright for that distance. Still no police officers. Finally one roommate just asks if he is running from the police. M shakes his head, then says a girl tried to rape me. Now we are shocked, and we go from not wanting the police to asking if he wants the police. A head shake for no. The rest of the story comes out. Spoiler alert. There wasn't attempted rape, but that's just how he chose to tell the story. So he ran into a girl at the bar he'd been hooking up with. They were talking, getting ready for another round that night and drinking lots of sake. Then M finds out this girl is in a long distance relationship. He nopes out of there and she doesn't like this. So she chases him back for these 2 miles. Lots of it through campus, yelling at him, trying to frick her. He only loses her at the entrance to our building, which needs a key card. The next month we are talking to some friends and tell them this story, and they look at each other and laugh. Turns out that night they came back to their dorm later than M, and they encountered the girl outside the building an hour later and she asked to be let in. They didn't recognize her and could tell she was drunk and said no. So good to know drunk M still has high morals. He calmed down with his partying quite a bit after that. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.